Hello, everybody. Yeah, always so glad to be with this wonderful community. Something especially sweet about doing so Erev Shabbat as we move towards Shabbat. So let's exhale and feel the ground, feel the space, physical environment, the openness of awareness. And you might stay with one or more of these resources as I speak a little bit. I want to share today with you something that is alive in my practice at the moment: beginnings and endings. And specifically, what we do at the beginning and end of an individual period of practice, sitting or standing or walking or lying down, be that practice individually or with others. I'm finding that having specific rituals for beginning and ending gives a very helpful structure and form. But more so because, as I'm sure you've experienced for yourself, the actual experience of practice can be far from structured or formal. So, in all its human wildness and unpredictability, bookending with rituals of beginning and ending can lend some steadiness and stability and deepen the meaningfulness and intentionality of what we're doing. And of course, our Jewish tradition is replete with ritual possibilities for our lives, daily life, and key life cycle events. And it inspires me to bring this wisdom into formal meditation practice too. So I'm going to offer some specific suggestions, specific beginnings and endings that support me at the moment. And in a more general way, I invite you to be curious here about routines and structures of beginning and ending your practice, which may support you. The specific suggestions which I'll introduce you to may not fit for you, but there might be others that you know, draw on, create, which you'll move to bring in. It's the general invitation. What I'll offer specifically is summarized in the source sheet for your reference. And I want to acknowledge Peter Barth, formerly of the Mahamudra Meditation Center in California, whose work was the seed for some of these practices. So I'll introduce the beginnings and endings through guided practice. And in between the beginnings and the endings, we'll have some space for silence. So let's begin. Posture. You could be guided in your choice of posture by words like freshness and looseness, clarity and dignity. You could come to an anchor, an aspect of your experience which is connecting, steadying, breath, ground, space, hands, feet. And as you settle the posture and the attention as best you can, more or less, here's the first of my rituals for beginning. I begin with a reminder and a restatement of kavanah, of intention, saying to myself something like, I'm practicing for the welfare of everyone and everything. Let everything be more peaceful, joyful, meaningful. Let everyone and everything realize its holiness. The words may be similar for you. They may be more particular at times. I'm practicing for the benefit of this person or collective, or this quality that it may increase in the world. Either way, I find it very helpful to connect with a wider field of meaning than the individual self. Of course, our practice is for ourselves. We benefit from it more directly than anyone else, but it goes beyond ourselves too, way beyond. And plugging into this wider field is very supportive. So I invite you to take a moment and reflect and remind or say to yourself, I'm practicing for dot dot dot. What or who are you practicing for? And after intention, then I extend an invitation to certain people, figures, to come and practice with me. Often I begin with our foremothers and forefathers, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, Zilpah, Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov. Sometimes I extend this to prophets and prophetesses, tzaddikim, righteous people, angels. Come practice with me, sit with me. Sometimes it's more particular. For example, for me personally, Leah has an especially strong resonance, the softness she is said to embody. Sometimes, as just this morning, for example, which is why I share it, it will just be her who I call in. Sometimes it's someone I know, alive or past, who inspires me, brings me love and care. I often imagine this invitation extending behind me and to the sides, feeling the space opening up to receive who might come along and join me. I invite you now to see if there's someone or more than one who you want to invite into your practice here and now. And the third and final part of my current ritual of beginning after intention and invitation is appreciation. Taking a moment to remember and appreciate that I have the opportunity to practice. We've made this time, made this decision, made it to the cushion, to the IJS daily sit. As it said, the hardest move in yoga is the move onto the mat. So you are here. That is not insignificant. And I sometimes include here some appreciation for being born into this period of time and this society. To be a human in this age, in this modern world, with all its challenges, yes, yes, and so many benefits, possibilities, and opportunities too. I remember other countries or periods of time I could have been born into, the difficulties I could be facing that I'm not facing. And sometimes this really reframes the difficulties which I am experiencing. I appreciate the discerning quality of the mind, its capacity to know, to be present, however fleetingly and inconsistently, to sense and feel and perceive. And I appreciate the pleasantness and openness and clarity of this moment. Not because they're the only qualities which may be here, but because they are here too. Pleasantness, openness, clarity. intention, invitation, appreciation. And let's take some time now to be quiet together. Perhaps returning to gently foregrounding the anchor you began with. Returning here as much and as often as is helpful. Perhaps you'll rest in open awareness. Perhaps you'll turn to a different practice which you're familiar with. Observing whatever region or aspect of your experience you're choosing to give attention to. Observing, allowing what is here to be here as best you can, allowing it to unfold as it does, as it will. Returning to your chosen intention time and again. Observing, allowing, returning. So, as we enter the final 5 minutes of our practice, I'll share my rituals for ending with you, as well as the timer I set to let me know when my practice time has ended. I set another one for a few minutes before that. And in the final few minutes, I turn to blessing practice, also known as loving kindness practice. I bring a person or group of people to mind, and internally, actively, I whisper to them the following blessings. May you be well. May you be safe and connected. May you know meaning and insight and joy. I invite you to try this out. Don't worry too much about who to bless. See who comes along. I'll put the words in the chat and you can use your own too. The focus is on physically practicing opening the channels of the heart, getting the kindness flowing right from in here as we prepare to move from practice into what's next. May you be well. May you be safe and connected. May you know meaning and insight and joy. May you be well. May you be safe and connected. May you know meaning and insight and joy, seeing how it is to offer the blessing. And as the practice is drawing to a close, maybe my timer has gone off again. That's my cue to say, may we all be well. May we all be safe and connected. May we all know meaning and insight and joy. May the fruits and blessings of this practice today, those that are seen and those that are unseen, known and not yet known, may they contribute to the welfare of all that lives. And finally, I turn to any imaginal figures that I invited into my practice at the start, with the words which I'll use to close here too. Thank you for practicing with me today.
Thank you so much, Zac. What a beautiful way for us to enter into Shabbat together. And friends, we seal the practice with an opportunity for those of you who are in mourning, observing a yard site, or if it's your custom to join in the mourner's Kaddish, to do so, in which case you can put the name or name of those who are honoring today in the chat. If you're not reciting Kaddish, thank you for staying present for those who are and offering them your compassionate support. And thanks to Natalie for sharing the words on the screen. If you are reciting the Kaddish, please join me by rising in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Yitgadal,
V'kadash Shmei Rabbah, Bi'alma Divrach Chilute, U'mech Malchuteh, Chayechon Uv'mechon Uv'chayet Al Bet Yisrael, Ugala Uv'zman Karev, Amen. Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'olam Lameh U'mayah, Yibarach Yishtabach V'av Yitruman V'naseh V'chadar V'tzaleh V'yatala Shemed V'kudushat B'chur V'ila Minko B'chata V'shirata Tush B'chata V'nechamata Da'amiram B'yama Amen. Shlama Rabba Min Shamayim V'chayim Aleinu V'al Yisrael V'yamru Amen. Shalom V'omav Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel V'yamru Amen.
All clear. Amen.
Amen. Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. Just a reminder that we will be closed on Monday in observance of Labor Day here in the States. So no live session on Monday, but we will be with you all next week, Tuesday through Friday, with a beautiful lineup of teachers. I'll tell you in a second who we have. It is, in honor of Rosh Chodesh Elul, Sarah Waxman of At the Well will lead us on Tuesday. Rabbi Miriam Nicolescu will lead us on Wednesday. Rabbi Daniel Raphael Silverstein on Thursday. And my dear colleague and friend, Kohenet Kashir Halep Bife, will lead us a week from today to sit into Shabbat. And Zac, thank you so much for today. Natalie, thanks for holding our space beautifully. And as always, you're invited to stay on for conversation with our teacher today, Zac Newman of Hamakom. And if you're leaving us now, I want to wish you a sweet and restorative Shabbat. We hope to see you back on Tuesday. And thanks for being with us. Be safe and well. So, Zac, let's bring you in. I know I wanted to give you a few minutes to add to the beautiful teaching, and just want to thank you so much for bringing us into your practice. And I have a question for you, but I'll hold it till after you share a little bit more about this practice.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, I really appreciate your presence. Yeah, there's one other thing that is part of my current beginnings and endings that I wanted to share with you and didn't have the space to do so in the guided practice. And I'm taking this from Rabbi Alan Liu. I've put a signpost to it on the source sheet from his book, Be Still and Get Going. I just came across this particular recommendation, or came across it again and took it up a few months ago. And I'm really into it. So I want to tell you about it. his practice is that each day after you do some meditation, um, once you've finished your practice, you turn to one of the aliyot, one of the portions, one of the 7 portions of the weekly Torah portion. Sunday you read the first one, on Monday you read the second, on Tuesday the third, and then on Shabbat the seventh and final one. And so you're reading these words of Torah for this weekly Torah portion in the afterglow, downstream at least, of the contemplative practice that you've just done, kind of preparing the soil, the heart, to then receive words of Torah. And it's a very interesting and often beautiful practice. And, Torah sometimes is challenging. I recommend if you do this, you stick with it for, I don't know, a little while, maybe at least a month, because the first day you do it, it might be, oh, what's this? But over time, it's really beautiful to cultivate this contemplative relationship with the weekly Torah portion. It's quite manageable. It's fairly short each time, and I'd be pleased to share more about it. You can be in touch with me if you have any questions. But I think that Rabbi Alan Liu, in the chapter of the book that I've signposted and given you a little excerpt from, explains it well.
Thanks so much, Zach. Just to be clear, does that mean that at the very end, it's that the practice leads into that encounter with the text?
Exactly that.
Is there a ritual after that, or that's where you go?
That's where I'm up to at the moment. I keep you posted.
Okay.
So I end the practice with the ways I described, some blessing practice and dedication and thanking. It's on the source sheet. And then once I finished, I then turn to the weekly Torah portion. You can read it in a chumash, you can read it online. There's different ways of doing it, but that's my step.
That's beautiful. I want to thank you so much for taking us, inside your own practice. And I may have missed it, but have you picked this up or different pieces from different teachers, or is it built up over time? How has that come about for you?
Yes, I think I've just absorbed bits and pieces, and this is the particular shape that it's taken for me over the last couple of months. So it's like familiar enough to me that I have confidence in it and want to share it with you, and new enough to me that I'm excited to do so. I know, as I mentioned, there's somebody called Peter Barth, who has a meditation guide for a type of meditation called Mahamudra, a Tibetan type of meditation. And there's a couple of pieces that are definitely from him. That's why I wanted to lift him up.
Right.
Appreciating the pleasantness, openness, and clarity of this moment is definitely a phrase of his. And the idea of inviting beings to sit with you is also his.
It's really quite beautiful. And I love the idea of inviting the ancestors to come in and it's just something very powerful about that. And I can imagine it would be very powerful as well. Do you change that up, or is that pretty standard for you? Do you invite different people?
It's also really interesting to see how it evolves, right? Your question is reminding me of that. Initially, there was a kind of consistency. I was regularly saying Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, Zilpah, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. And then as it evolved, it also got a bit more diverse. And it's like, oh, this person is really speaking to me, the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism, for example. Or if there's somebody who's teaching that I've kind of connected with recently, it's like, oh, they're sort of here in the wings and I can invite them in. So I think some consistency is helpful at the beginning. You get into something and then it opens up and you see what comes along.
Yeah, it's great. So there's a question from Lori, when working here, that was really describing rituals, right? And she asks, are there not beginning rituals we can create to do even before we enter our sit, such as placing an object nearby, a self-hug before going to the chair, etc.? And sometimes um, I'll invite people to dedicate their space as they're sitting down by decluttering or just looking around and something like that. So are there other rituals that you have? And the other question, here's a two-part question. Other rituals, preset rituals, and of course one could get carried away, right? Like there can be a lot of accretion. Maybe this is the same question, which has to do with uh, the danger of ritual becoming rote, that is done mindlessly, right? When you do something repeatedly. So I have a question about how to keep it fresh, which, how to do it ritual in a mindful way. So are there rituals before sitting, maybe after sitting, and how do you keep it from becoming rote? We have perennial tension in Jewish spiritual practice between keva, which is the fixed practice, and kavanah, intention. And we, in the mindfulness world, we tend to focus a lot on kavanah. And actually, what I appreciate about what you're bringing today is, creating structure and a scaffolding for practice that supports it.
Thank you. Yeah, I really feel inspired by our tradition in this respect. The scaffold can be so holding and containing and meaning making, right? Like that's something I'd like to add, that the first time you do any one of these things is probably not going to be the most meaningful. It takes getting into. I remember saying the Shema with my son. He's only 2, but when I started doing it, I thought, well, he doesn't really know before bed. Like he doesn't really know what's going on. What am I saying this for? He's just kind of grabbing my face, and as I do it each evening, it kind of absorbs history and meaningfulness, and you get into it more and more. Um, do I have preset rituals? I thank you for the example of what I mentioned briefly, the kind of endless possibility here, and really the encouragement to make it your own. I, at the moment, don't have anything regular apart from the pieces that I've shared with you. Over the years, many different things, stretching, for example, doing a bit of movement either before or after, according to the capacity, needs, preferences of your body. That helps me a lot. So I'll mention that one. But yes, there is a kind of a dance of like not overloading the whole thing, because then you're like, oh, I've got to get through my
Right.
28-point checklist of beginnings and endings, and so that's what I've got so far. I really encourage you to experiment and play. And I guess this is speaking to the second part of the question, like keva, kavanah, freshness, consistency. How do we balance those two? And I guess in short, like I don't know the answer to that question. And that's kind of how I balance them. You settle down in any one thing too much and it starts to lose its freshness. So I imagine I won't be doing this particular set of rituals forever. At a certain point, something else will come along, or the benefit of dropping something and just coming in fresh and just sitting down and seeing what's there might kind of tip the balance, and I might go into that. Certainly if I reflect over the 15, 16 years of my daily practice, it's had all sorts of chapters and phases. In a way, Shema, right? The basic injunction, listen, and just keep listening. Is it still serving? Is it still helpful? And as we listen, we maybe don't need to answer too quickly. I might doubt it one day. That's probably not the day to give it up. Carry on, carry on. And if, it keeps on feeling like actually a little more constricting than opening. Let's try something else.
I really like that. It's struck me. Well, I actually want to invite people, if you are comfortable sharing, um, who accompanied you today, as Zach was, inviting us to consider that. Who accompanied you? Because I saw there was at least one person responded to that. And um, it also struck me, Zach, that some of these elements actually kind of correspond to the beginning of the Amidah. It's almost like a transforming the meditation into the Amidah, especially that setting the intention. There's a phrase, Adonai Sfatai Tiftach, God, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise before the Amidah, which is kind of an intention setting. And then the first blessing of the Amidah is about the ancestors. It kind of layers very nicely onto it. So this might be a practice that actually could transform people's experience of the Amidah as well. So I actually wonder about that. I don't know what your prayer life is like, or your liturgical communal prayer life is like, but actually prompts me to ask you to see that. In what way does your meditation practice inform your, I'll just say prayer life, if I can put you on the spot with that.
Yeah, you certainly can. I really appreciate the question, and it's really
In
quite
2 minutes.
delightful.
In 2 minutes.
In 2 minutes, yeah, it's really delightful to um like I knew that I was drawing on the tradition, right? And the general sense of like how helpful these routines and rituals are. And that's about as far as I got. I hadn't really tried to like, oh, what am I taking this from? And that I just kind
Mhm,
of felt it coming
mhm,
through. And
mhm,
so that you're naming the Amidah, it's amazing. Prayer, I would say honestly, it's a really live and ongoing inquiry for me.
mhm,
Like I find when I'm singing, it really comes through. And when I'm saying words quietly to myself, it's harder, right? It's harder for me. So
mhm,
um, there's a kind of like calling out to something beyond myself, which feels more like prayer than meditation, although, of course, the two are not so separate,
right.
that I find myself practicing. And often from within my meditation practice, or when I'm in shul, I'm exploring.
Mm, mm. Thanks for that sharing. Thank you for that. And many of us can identify with that. So let's close. I'm just going to note, thank you for those of you who shared. And I want to thank those who attended with us today. The Shekhinah attended, Raphael, the angel attended, Rabbi David Wolf attended, grandmothers, ancestors, angel, and the Baal Shem Tov was here as well. So we're all honored. It was really wonderful to have that invitation. And thank you so much, Zach, for prompting, for inviting people and encouraging us to consider that, and for enhancing our practice so beautifully today. As always, we're grateful to you. We're grateful to you, Natalie, as well, for holding our space, each of you for being here. As Zach said at the beginning, not an insignificant thing to make time in your day to be here. And for many of you, you're here almost every day, or most days, or many days. So we're grateful that you're here to create this community of practice, and want to wish everybody a sweet, restorative, meaningful Shabbat. May this practice enhance it. May you bring some of it into your Shabbat and sweeten it for you. And we'll see you next Tuesday, I hope, at our usual time. Many blessings, everyone. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom, Zach.